Close your eyes and think back to the early 2000s. If you looked around a crowded room, a train station, or a coffee shop, almost every single person was holding the exact same device. It was virtually indestructible. The battery lasted for an entire week, and it had that one iconic ringtone that the entire world instantly recognized. That device was a Nokia. At its absolute peak in 2007, Nokia was not just a mobile phone company. They were the undisputed kings of the world. They controlled a staggering 51% of the entire global mobile phone market. To put that into perspective, that is more dominance than Apple and Samsung combined have today. They were valued at over $100 billion. The executives sitting in their massive headquarters in Finland believed they were completely invincible. They thought the game was over and they had won forever, but they were about to make the most expensive, arrogant mistake in corporate history. The turning point happened on January 9th, 2007. A man named Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and introduced a device that looked like a piece of alien technology. It was the Apple iPhone. It had no physical keyboard. It was just one giant, beautiful piece of glass. How did the untouchable leadership at Nokia react to this absolute game changer? They laughed. Nokia's chief engineers and billionaire executives looked at the iPhone and called it a fragile toy. They pointed out that it had terrible battery life. They mocked the fact that it dropped calls and that typing on a glass screen was uncomfortable. Nokia firmly believed that real business people would always want physical buttons. They were obsessed with their own hardware, but Nokia completely misunderstood what the iPhone actually was. The iPhone was not just a new telephone, it was a pocket-sized computer. Apple understood that the future was not about how strong the plastic was. The future was entirely about the software. Apple had iOS, a beautiful, smooth, user-friendly operating system. Nokia, on the other hand, was stuck with an ancient, clunky, and complicated software called Symbian. As months turned into years, the public completely lost interest in physical buttons. They wanted apps, they wanted smooth internet browsing, they wanted touchscreens. A new player named Google suddenly entered the war, offering a free operating system called Android to any company that wanted it. Samsung and HTC quickly jumped on the Android lifeboat. But Nokia, their arrogance blinded them once again. They proudly rejected Android, refusing to admit that their own Symbian software was a complete disaster. Inside the walls of Nokia, a toxic culture of fear had taken over. The middle managers were absolutely terrified of the top executives. Nobody wanted to deliver the bad news that Apple and Google were destroying them. So instead of adapting, the engineers lied. They told the leadership that everything was fine. By the time the executives finally realized the truth, the empire was already burning to the ground. By 2010, Nokia's market share was in a terrifying freefall. Desperate to survive, they brought in a new CEO named Stephen Elop. He famously wrote a devastating internal memo to his employees, comparing Nokia to a man standing on a burning oil platform in the middle of a freezing dark ocean. He told them that to survive, they had to jump into the unknown. But the jump was too late. The financial bleeding could not be stopped. The company that once defined the modern communication era was completely out of cash and out of ideas. Finally, in 2013, the unthinkable happened. Nokia completely surrendered. They sold their entire mobile phone division to Microsoft for just $7.2 billion. A company that was once worth well over $100 billion sold for a tiny fraction of its value. Today, the story of Nokia is taught in business schools around the world as the ultimate tragedy. It proves that no matter how big your empire is and no matter how invincible you feel, the market owes you absolutely nothing. If you fall in love with your own past and refuse to embrace the future, you will be replaced. In the brutal world of business, arrogance is the most expensive luxury of all.